Long Beach, California, 1964. Behind the scenes at the International Karate Championships, a small group of martial artists stood quietly, watching something unusual unfold. At the center of the room was a young man named Bruce Lee. He wasn't famous yet. No films, no headlines, no worldwide reputation. He was only 23 years old and known mainly as an instructor teaching a handful of students in Oakland. In front of him, another martial artist held a single wooden board. It wasn't supported by blocks or balanced on stands. There was nothing solid underneath it. The board was simply held in the air, unsteady and free to move. Around them stood about 20 seasoned fighters. These were black belts from different disciplines: karate, judo, kung fu, and taekwondo. Many had spent decades training, competing, and teaching. Off to the side stood a respected 6th-degree karate master, arms folded, watching closely. Bruce slowly lifted his leg and set his body into position. The person holding the board struggled to keep it steady. There was no firm base, no structure to help absorb force. What happened moments later didn't just affect that board. It challenged a long-standing belief about how strength and technique really work in martial art. To understand why this moment mattered, we need to step back a few minutes. The International Karate Championships of 1964 were the largest martial arts event in America at the time. The tournament was organized by Ed Parker, a well-known and highly respected Kenpo master. Parker had invited Bruce Lee to appear as a special guest, not as a competitor, but as a demonstrator. Most people at the event had never heard Bruce's name before. But Ed Parker had. He had seen Bruce train, watched his speed, and recognized that his approach was different from traditional methods. Earlier that day, Parker made a simple request. "Show them what you do." Bruce agreed. Now, as the martial artists gathered backstage, curiosity filled the room. Among them was Master Tanaka, a 6th-degree karate instructor in his 40s, with more than 25 years of experience. Like many others there, he believed deeply in traditional techniques and long-established rules. What they were about to witness would quietly question those beliefs, and leave a lasting impression on everyone in the room. The style Tanaka represented was traditional and strict. Everything followed established rules. Discipline, posture, precise movements, and formal strength displays done exactly as taught. Tanaka volunteered to go first. He wanted the younger martial artists watching to see what proper karate strength looked like. His students set up the test carefully. 3 thick pine boards were stacked with spacers between them, resting firmly across solid concrete blocks. The setup was perfect and unmoving. Tanaka stepped back and centered himself. He took a slow breath, focused his energy, and brought his fist down with full force. The boards snapped instantly. All 3 split cleanly. Pieces scattered across the floor. Several onlookers nodded in approval. It was a clear display of years of training, control, and conditioning delivered in a single strike. Tanaka bowed, then faced the group. "This is how we demonstrate power in karate," he said, motioning toward the broken boards. "The wood gives an honest result. Either it breaks, or it doesn't." Then he looked directly at Bruce Lee. His tone wasn't aggressive, but it carried weight. "Mr. Lee," he said, "Ed Parker speaks very highly of you. Perhaps you would like to demonstrate. Show us how Kung Fu approaches strength." Everyone understood what was happening. This wasn't a casual invitation. It was a direct test. Bruce stepped forward without hesitation. "That was excellent technique," Bruce said calmly. "A very clean break." Tanaka acknowledged the comment with a slight nod. "But I do have a question," Bruce continued, "about using boards to measure power." Tanaka gestured politely. "Go ahead." "In a real fight," Bruce asked, "does your opponent stand still like those boards? Does he stay balanced on blocks, waiting to be struck?" The room went quiet. Tanaka paused, then replied, "Of course not. But the boards show strength. If you can break wood, you can break bone." "Possibly," Bruce said evenly. "Or it may mean we're testing the wrong thing." Every person in the room was fully focused now. "What do you mean?" someone asked. Bruce picked up a single unbroken board, 1 inch thick, plain pine. This board, Bruce said, holding it up, was supported by solid blocks. It didn't move. It was a fixed target that allows you to gather force, prepare, and strike something that cannot react. He let the board rest in his hands as the idea settled in. That kind of test, Bruce explained, allows someone to deliver maximum force to an object that doesn't move. He then turned to a judo black belt standing nearby. "Jim," Bruce said, "could you hold this board for me?" Jim stepped forward and took the board, gripping each end. "Hold it at chest height," Bruce said. "But don't tighten your grip. Don't brace yourself. Just hold it lightly." Jim looked uncertain, but he followed the instructions. He lifted the board in front of his chest, holding it gently, without locking his arms or tensing his body. The board hung in the air with no support at all. No blocks, no stands, no solid structure beneath it. Just a piece of wood suspended loosely. "This," Bruce said, "is closer to a real target." He looked around the room. In an actual fight, the other person moves. Their body absorbs force. There's no solid base, sending energy back into your strike. Tanaka watched closely, clearly doubtful. "So what are you saying?" he asked. Bruce took a step back. "I'm saying that breaking a supported board shows you can create force," Bruce replied. "But breaking an unsupported board shows you can deliver that force into something that moves." He raised his leg calmly, setting it into a side kick position. "If your technique only works when everything is perfectly set up," Bruce continued, "what happens when conditions aren't perfect?" Before Tanaka could answer, Bruce struck. There was no long build-up, no dramatic pause, just a fast, controlled movement. His foot hit the center of the board. A sharp sound echoed through the room. The board split cleanly down the middle. Jim staggered slightly but stayed on his feet, still holding the two ends. He looked down in surprise. The room erupted with voices. "How did that happen? It wasn't even supported." Several martial artists stepped closer, examining the broken pieces, checking for flaws or trick. Jim raised both halves and shook his head. "I hardly felt anything," he said. "It just split." Tanaka stood motionless. For over 25 years, he had trained relentlessly. Endless hours refining form, conditioning his hands, practicing traditional movements, and breaking stacked boards using textbook method. And now, a young martial artist had just done something Tanaka had never even considered trying. Part of him wanted to explain it away. Maybe it was chance. Maybe there was something unusual about the board. But the part of him that had earned its rank, the part built on honesty and understanding, knew better. He had just seen something that challenged everything he thought he knew about power. It was something real. Something that revealed a blind spot Tanaka didn't even know he had. Bruce picked up the two broken pieces and held them up. "When a board is resting on blocks," he explained, "it has nowhere to move. All the force is forced back into one spot." Then he nodded toward Jim. "But when someone holds the board," Bruce continued, "their body absorbs part of the energy. Their arms move. The board bends. To break it under those conditions, the transfer of energy has to be much more precise." A younger student raised his hand. "So breaking a supported board is easier?" Bruce shook his head. "Not easier," he said. "Just different." He looked around the room. "Breaking a supported board shows you can create force. That matters. But it doesn't prove you can deliver that force effectively to something that moves and gives way." Bruce turned back to Tanaka. "In a real confrontation, the human body behaves like a board held in the hand. It shifts. It absorbs impact. If your power only works when there's a solid base behind the target, that power becomes less useful." Tanaka said nothing. The room stayed quiet. After a moment, Tanaka spoke. "Do it again." Bruce nodded. Another martial artist stepped forward and held a fresh board the same way, loose grip, no support, nothing rigid underneath. This time, Bruce explained as he prepared. The key isn't muscle, he said calmly. It's focus. It's how efficiently energy moves. He lifted his leg and positioned it carefully. You're not striking the board itself, Bruce continued. You're sending energy through it into its structure. He kicked. The result was immediate. The board split cleanly down the center. The person holding it barely moved. Bruce lowered his leg and looked at the group. The board breaks because the energy passes through faster than the structure can absorb it, he said. He paused, letting the lesson sink in. It's not about hitting harder, Bruce added. It's about transferring energy efficiently. Traditional braking relies on rigid support to increase impact. But when the target moves, that support disappears. At that point, power must come from precise energy transfer alone. The room remained silent, every person there rethinking what they thought they understood. Then something happened that would be talked about for years. Bruce asked Carl, a heavyweight boxer, to step forward. Carl weighed about 220 pounds, strong, balanced, and athletic. Bruce had him hold a padded training target against his chest. Stand naturally, Bruce said. Don't brace yourself. Carl followed the instruction, holding the pad lightly. Bruce positioned himself just 1 inch away. He extended his fist until it barely touched the pad. Someone in the room whispered, "One punch." There was no space to build momentum. No wind-up. No dramatic motion. Then Bruce moved. It was almost subtle, a small turn of the hips, a short extension of the arm, and a precise release of energy. The pad compressed. Carl's eyes widened. And then, despite his size and weight, Carl was sent backward. Not a stumble. Not a step back. His feet lifted off the ground. He moved several feet through the air before landing. The room exploded with disbelief. That can't be real. I need to see that again. Carl stood up, laughing in shock. I felt it straight through the pad, he said. Through my arms, into my chest, right to my center. It felt like getting hit by something massive, but from only an inch away. Bruce repeated the demonstration 2 more times. Each time, the result was the same. Tanaka watched closely. His expression was no longer doubtful. The confidence he once had was replaced with focus and curiosity. He now looked less like a challenger and more like a student witnessing something new. Finally, Tanaka spoke. Mr. Lee, he said, I need to understand this. What you're showing seems to go against everything I was taught about power. Bruce shook his head gently. Not against it, he replied. It completes it. He gestured toward the broken boards. Your demonstrations show how to create force. That's real and important. But creating force is only half of the process. Bruce paused. The other half is how that force is delivered. He looked back at Tanaka. You've proven you can generate strength. But can you apply that strength to a target that moves? A target that gives way? A target that doesn't line up perfectly for you? Tanaka thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. In our forms, he said, we practice against imagined opponents. We assume they are in position when we strike. Bruce met his gaze. Exactly, Bruce said. In controlled demonstrations, those assumptions work. But in real combat, the target doesn't cooperate. Tanaka nodded slowly, finishing the thought himself. He looked at the broken boards on the floor, then back at Bruce. I've spent 25 years refining techniques against fixed targets, he admitted. And those years gave you real ability, Bruce replied calmly. True strength. The question now is whether that strength can be used when conditions are constantly changing. No one spoke. The room was completely quiet. Everyone understood this was no longer just a display of skill. It was a shift in thinking. A younger student finally asked, So, does that mean board breaking has no value? No, Bruce answered immediately. Board breaking has purpose. It teaches commitment. It trains focus. It conditions the body and helps overcome hesitation when striking something solid. All of that matters. He lifted one of the broken boards and held it up. But we shouldn't confuse demonstration with application, he continued. Breaking boards proves you can break boards. It doesn't automatically prove you can fight effectively. Tanaka gave a slow, thoughtful nod. So this, he said, is what you teach. I teach adaptability, Bruce replied. Fixed positions, still targets, perfect setups, they're useful for training. But fighting is unpredictable. It's moving, messy, and imperfect. Your opponent doesn't stay still or give you ideal conditions. He paused. You need power that works when nothing is perfect. Power that still functions when the target moves, like breaking a board that isn't supported. Tanaka looked again at the broken wood. Then he did something no one expected. He bowed to Bruce. Not a casual bow. A deep, formal one. The kind a student offers a teacher. Mr. Lee, Tanaka said, I would be honored if you would teach me. Not your style or techniques, but your way of understanding how power is applied. Bruce returned the bow with equal respect. I'd be glad to share what I've learned, he said. And I'd be honored to learn from your experience with traditional training. What happened backstage in Long Beach that day changed more than one man's perspective. Word spread quickly through the martial arts world. The unsupported board breaks, the short-range punch. Those moments became legendary. But the true impact wasn't physical. It was philosophical. Bruce had shown that what works in controlled demonstrations doesn't always translate to real-world situations. Years later, this idea would become a core principle of Jeet Kune, the philosophy Bruce described as be like water. Water adapts. It flows. It doesn't need perfect conditions. It adjusts to whatever shape it encounters and applies force naturally, when and where it's needed. Tanaka carried that lesson forward. He continued teaching traditional karate, the forms, the discipline, the conditioning, but he also introduced movement, unpredictability, and practical application. And he told his students, first, master the basics. Learn to generate power. Develop precision. Then learn how to use that power when nothing goes according to plan. That was the real lesson of Long Beach. Train your tools. Strengthen your technique. But don't stop there. Put your skills to the test when things move, when there's resistance, when outcomes aren't predictable. That's where technique turns into real ability. Now think about your own life. Where are you only succeeding because everything is perfectly set up? Maybe your presentation works flawlessly with slides, but struggles when technology fails. Maybe you perform well during practice, but freeze when pressure appears. Maybe your method looks impressive in controlled situations, but falls apart when plans change. True expertise isn't proven when conditions are ideal. It's proven when they aren't. When the screen goes dark. When the client asks something unexpected. When the situation becomes unclear and uncomfortable. That's when real capability shows itself. Bruce never dismissed traditional training or board breaking. Instead, he broadened what power really means. He showed that strength isn't just about force, it's about flexibility, efficiency, and applying skill when conditions are far from perfect. Your abilities need the same growth. Learn the basics with structure. Practice with support. Then challenge yourself in unpredictable situations. That's where competence turns into mastery. If this story changed how you think about the difference between showing skill and actually using it, support the channel and follow for more stories about training, mindset, and the moment when theory meets reality. And share this in the comments. What's something you do well when everything is set up just right, but struggle with when things get messy? Where is the gap between your controlled practice and real-world application? That's the place where growth begins.